All right, guys, happy Wednesday. My son broke my headphones, but he decorated my computer, so I guess it's okay, and we shall keep moving forward. So you guys may have noticed I've been a little absent. That's because I've been super busy focusing on what's happening in present time, but that doesn't mean we still can't go back in time. So let's finish where we left off. The sitting judge questioning the logic of what I was being required to do. Not a frustrated student, not an internet critic, but the judge, somebody who's neutral, somebody who sees things through the judicial system, somebody who is out of the scenario looking at it from a different perspective. So today we're pulling back the curtain on the nursing education machine. We're investigating a nursing shortage, a national crisis, in my opinion, public figures like Anthony Fauci and Secretary Becerra tell us we need more healthcare workers. But while the front door is wide open, schools like the college I attended are what feels like, in my observations, locking the back door, holding degrees hostage to pad their own NCLEX stats, ? It's the academic version of Elizabeth Holmes selling a promising career while knowing full and well that they'll block you at the finish line if you don't help their marketing numbers. Because let's get one thing straight. I completed my nursing education. It was equal to the cohort of students I had with me that went on to take their NCLEX. The only difference was this exit exam. And through my research, I observed that these exit exams are predictor exams to determine how well you will do on taking the NCLEX the first time. So if you don't meet a certain benchmark per se, you're not taking the NCLEX. Why is that? When the NCLEX allows you to take it more than once, you can remediate, you can take a refresher course, you can take it again. There is no law in the nursing industry that says you can only take your NCLEX once. So let's talk about the remediation. It's a beautiful word, isn't it? It sounds like it's helpful. It sounds like a doctor giving you a prescription, right? On the surface, but in reality, it feels like a payday loan. If you fail the predictor exam, a test that predicts your future, that predicts if you'll pass the NCLEX the first time, which is already a crazy thought in my mind. The fact that anybody thinks they can predict the future, especially an artificially third-party, unregulated exam, is mind-blowing to me. That then forces you into remediation activities that look, to me, through my observations, suspiciously like paying for more courses and more time for what? Who's benefiting off of that? An analogy I can use to bring context to it, what it looks like to me, is it feels like somebody breaking your leg and then trying to sell you a crutch. If I pass the actual curriculum, what's needed to be a nurse, if my education is equal to that of a nurse, that of my peers in my cohort who went on to take their NCLEX, what is there to remediate? Now, my leg's broken, but you gave me a crutch. And at the same time, you're saying, even the crutch is expiring. I don't think you could use that crutch anymore because now, the healthcare system has advanced and we have better crutches now. So you're going to need to give that back to us and buy a new one. It feels like, or I question, is a school essentially treating the education like a milk carton? Like, claiming if you don't pass internal hurdles, your entire degree, years of clinicals, thousands of dollars, your tuition, just expire? That's what I'm questioning. Through my observations and what I have learned, those are the thoughts that go through my head. Imagine if Harvard told a law student, you passed the bar, but we're not giving you the diploma because our internal mock trial didn't go well. It's absurd. A policy has turned education into a subscription service where they control the cancel button. Like, what is going on? Under the N.J.A.C 1337-121, New Jersey law explicitly says your performance on these exit exams alone shall not affect your ability to graduate. And the Board of Nursing regulates these nursing schools. Although they have discretion, they do not control the law. So, yet here we are in court listening to an attorney versus a pro se litigant with a judge listening in the middle through the eyes of the judicial system to explain to all of us. It's very interesting. But I'll stop there. I'm not just fighting for my degree. I'm fighting for the integrity of a profession that is being hollowed out by bureaucratic, what feels like through my observation could be objectively seen as greed. You know, how can you take $30,000 from somebody, have them complete their transcript and say, we're not giving you a degree because of an exit exam that was used to inflate internal metrics? That's my observation, my understanding, my feeling. I don't believe that's your call to make. If a student has paid their tuition, has no misconduct, has passed everything required for that transcript, the degree doesn't become a gift. It becomes an administrative ministerial duty to put that on paper. It feels like rage bait. Think about the fact that what if somebody was being paid just to bully me? Like, that's what it feels like. Oh my God. Welcome back to the nursing investigation. This is where we left off. The court says, I mean, that doesn't sound logical. What is she going to do? Take another 30 grand worth of courses and now you don't even have... The college's attorney goes, it is not 30 grand, Your Honor. She was given the opportunity to retake that course again if she followed the proper procedure for remediation, but she didn't do that. She waited until 5 years after to try and retake the courses, but that is just not the procedure of the school. The school has a curriculum that has to be approved by the Board of Nursing. It really can't bend its curriculum to accommodate a single student just because. The court goes, and now you're saying they don't even require it though. The college's attorney goes, but the course has since... So let's pause here. Let me give you my experience, my perspective, how I'm interpreting this through my observation. It's not 30 grand, Your Honor, she says. Well, if you look at my contract, I did pay in total, based off the financial information, let's say roughly $27,000 just through tuition. Like this does not account for other out-of-pocket costs enrolling into the school and what was needed for me to even get this far. This is my transcript. I do not see a course on here that I failed that I needed to take again. This is my observation through assumption that the proper procedure for remediation is this. In the contract, it talks about 2 forms of remediation as far as I have found so far. Students who do not meet the passing standards of these exit exam benchmarks after 2 attempts but have reached certain minimum scores will have the opportunity to remediate and graduate. Minimum score remediation. So you're telling me these benchmarks actually can be moved for certain students? Where's the consistency in that? So it's not. So these benchmarks aren't even the end-all be-all. So what are they really there for? And what do they actually mean? And how can you apply it to some but not all? So again, even if you get close enough, it's at their discretion whether they will allow you to remediate and graduate. So even if you get that far, they could say yes to you and no to her and vice versa. When you're going to apply such a rigorous benchmark that controls a graduation, shouldn't it be consistent for all students? Here's where things get even more interesting, because on the grievance letter that I was sent, it didn't say all of that. You know what it said? Students who do not meet the passing standards after 4 attempts, ... so important. We already discussed this in the last video. Check it out. They will be withdrawn from their program of study, which is exactly what happened to me. Such students will be provided with 2 additional attempts on the progression exam after completing the post-exam remediation. But remember, that didn't apply to me because I didn't meet those minimum score remediation benchmarks. So that's a little confusing, right? Why would you put that in my grievance letter like that when that didn't even apply to me? Nonetheless, anyways, I go to the dean and I'm like, hey, exit exam remediation. I reached out a couple times, like, what can I do? Looking to remediate. And I find myself so funny. I didn't even know I said this. Look at the bottom here. It says, looking to remediate ASAP. Would like to take my boards with support from the school to ensure I pass the first time and not jeopardize the school's accreditation. That was on January 16th, 2019. By January 30th, 2019, I'm posed with this. There has to be another option. I don't see how taking another year of classes I already took is helpful. That seems logical, right? So what do you mean I didn't try to remediate? Number 1. Number 2, I didn't even qualify for minimum score remediation. Number 3, I have the email right here talking about taking another year of classes doesn't feel, through my observation, to be remediation. Ma'am, I'm sorry. The very people I paid roughly $30,000 to educate me, now I'm being held accountable for believing when I was told more or less through my observation what it felt for basically my academic transcript to be void if there's no degree. I can't go get my license without the degree. There's nothing I can do with that transcript to get my license without that degree at that current time. So when you're telling me that, and I believe you, and I know to be true that I have to redo it all over again from the email I showed you, I now take the same amount of time to go and do the math, because it actually pans out. It's not easy to go to school or put yourself in that position to go to the school. You need support, you need resources, you need more money. Now I need to account for double the student loan debt. You think I'm going to go back here after what you just did to me? Now I'm traumatized, I'm scared, so I'm going to go seek other places. That brings us to around 2023 when I can do it again. I start reaching out to schools like, hey, this is what I've done. What can you do? Like, what are we looking at? And they're looking at me like I'm a dog that's barking and I don't make sense, because they're like, you done completed everything. Why are you coming back to school? Can you imagine what that feels to an external party? You have a prospective student here saying they completed all their academics and just need a degree conferral date, and they're like, I'm sorry, what? Can you just go back to your school? Because I think, something needs to be hashed out here. So that's exactly what I do, and that's where the grievance letter comes into play. It wasn't a delay by my means, just being like, you know what? No single mom gives up a degree and $30,000 and all those blood, sweat, and tears just to throw it away. Like, does that seem logical that somebody would do that, especially somebody like, and literally did everything just to be like, yeah, forget it. Like, that doesn't sound logical to me. That it didn't happen like that. So it's just like makes me question, how can you try to profit on, your own delay that you caused me to believe? It's just like, oh my gosh, like what? Like, am I in the twilight zone? When I do find out, I do act accordingly. As soon as I find out and I get that extra information, I do go directly to the school and I file a grievance, a formal complaint, and I'm getting the same answer that I've always gotten. I even tried to request my official transcript and I was denied. Like, I did try, and then I was like, what is going on? So I go to social media and I'm like, has anybody experienced this? What is going on? Have things changed? What happened? And then I get hit with the defamation lawsuit. And now it's going to take more time because you dismissed the claims, and then I have to go back and file another claim. It's just like, I'm not delaying anything. You, in my observation, are driving the car. I was in the back seat. I trusted you. Like, how can you condemn somebody almost, in my observation? How can you condemn somebody for believing you when you're the very people she paid to trust to lead her? I digress. The school curriculum has been approved by the Board of Nursing. It really can't just bend its curriculum to accommodate a single student just because. So you're telling me that your education, so in my observation, I'm interpreting that the school does have to adhere through the Board of Nursing's regulations. And then when she says something about they can't bend the curriculum to accommodate a single student just because, well, didn't you just do that for other students who didn't meet the benchmark and allowed them to remediate and graduate? And then we left off with the court saying, and now you're saying they don't even require it though. School's attorney says, but the course has since changed. It is not just that exam. Things have been modified to match the needs and the requirements of the Board of Nursing. You don't say. That's the core of the argument. She goes on to say it's not just that one exam, other things have changed as well. Okay, that's a fair statement. You know, in the healthcare industry and in the healthcare profession, like, yeah, things do change, but a nurse from 1995 doesn't go back and repeat all her courses because the healthcare industry has changed. So the court says, well, how long are those courses good for? The school's attorney says, that I would have to check with my client. Insert Justin Bieber, please.
You don't get to ask me questions.
Why not?
Because you just don't.
Court says there has to be a way of refreshing or doing whatever so she can get her degree. I mean, you know, these schools are, you know, I get these cases. I mean, I understand. Look, let me say something. You know, it is never the answer to start, you know, trashing online. I get these cases all the time because nobody really cares, you know. Like when people, they read these, so it's like disgruntled this, and then another person says it's the greatest thing going. And it's like when you stay at a hotel, do you look at the do you look at the ones or the fives? You look at the threes, you know. So people, they figure somebody had a bad experience, you know. So I'm not sure, and then you get yourself in trouble. The next thing, you get sued for slander, defamation, or whatever. And then everybody digs in deeper as opposed to trying to find the solution. Like, to retake everything just sounds crazy, let alone paying for it if I had to. But there's got to be a way, right? So, like, let's look for a solution. I've had to learn you can't come out and be like somebody's lying or somebody's breaking the law. You have to actually describe the series of events. So, for example, I can't say, you know, somebody's lying, right? Somebody's breaking the law, but I can say what I observed is a different kind of sequence of events that does not align with that experience. I've learned certain things that I've said in the court of law can be misconstrued, and whatever you can say will be held against you. Well, maybe N.J.A.C knows it. Everybody knows it. But like, it's just, you have to learn how to speak in a different way. It's like the law is like a whole new language, and I'm learning and I'm growing. I have good intentions. I'm doing everything in good faith. I'm getting better. But I do agree with him on that. You know, I have to. You know, that is the law. So I just have to be careful in the way that I say things. So when you guys are like, why does she keep repeating herself? Interpretation, observation, opinion, allegedly. People say that because it's not an absolute protection, but it helps the overall picture. So you have to phrase things in a certain way is all I'm trying to say. And typically you don't talk about court cases online. Like, that's rule number one. Always, you know, you have to talk to your attorney. You know, my case has evolved and has become a little different because of it being in education, having to do with the public and such things. But typically you don't do that. But there's a lot of moving pieces here that I can't discuss right now. And it's never the goal to do that. Like, I was only led there because I wasn't getting help. I wasn't getting any answers. Like, I need help. Like, I'm not an institution with so many resources and people to help me or ask questions to. Like, I have to use the public. That's a tool I have to use because I'm not getting the help where it's needed. You know what I'm saying? So he's like, and I totally agree with this. But on the other hand, it's like every time you get a bad Google review or an unhappy customer, what are you going to sue them? Like, especially when you're what could be considered a public figure or public entity, like you're not held to the same standards as like an average person. Like you have a much bigger burden of proof because you're in the public's eye and you can't have the good without the bad, you know? And then I totally agree with what he's saying. Like, why? There's no reason to do all that. Like, from my perspective, like, I don't think there's any reason to do all this. Like, just find the solution. Like, what's the solution? Like, it doesn't have to be in court. It doesn't have to be on the record. Like, literally, I don't have to talk about this ever again. But, like, I'm just asking for a reasonable solution. May not be the perfect solution for either party, you know? Nobody's going to walk away happy, but everybody walks away kind of thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just don't understand why people would spend so much time and energy and money like arguing all day for days, for years. Like, holy somebody calling the propanol, somebody calling the metropolol, somebody calling the control. I digress. The court goes on to say, what I would do is this, you know, of course we will give you a chance to respond because remember, I'm a pro se litigant and I was still debating on, am I getting an attorney? Am I showing up? Like, I don't know what to do. I'm learning all this in real time. So I did not respond yet. I did not know procedure. So when you represent yourself in court, you are held to a standard through my understanding and observation of an attorney. But the court also has to be mindful that you are a pro se litigant. They have to understand you may not know everything, but you do have to be accountable in applying it, if that makes sense. This is what he says. I'll give you the chance to respond. You could bring an answer. You can bring a counterclaim saying that, you know, you paid, you want your degree, you want your money back, this, that, whatever it may be. Then they have their case. That way they have their case and you have your case. In the meantime, I say, okay. I thought he was finished, so I said, okay. But I want to back up a little bit because he brings up something very critical that I've come to learn. When it comes to defamation, what I've learned is defamation is a lawsuit that often centers the idea that the statement was presented as true or was a subjective opinion or was made in context that is legally protected, which would be a privilege. So substantial truth is an absolute defense that can be used. You do not need to prove every minor detail was perfect. You just need to show like objectively, substantially, like it was mostly true, like the gist, like what you're trying to convey was true, like the sting of the message, the heart of the case, the heart of what you're saying is accurate. You know, if one underlying core fact is true, the claim generally fails regardless of how much damage the plaintiff claims. Like, as long as, you know, you're trying to convey the truth, that matters. And we're human. Like, everything I say isn't going to be perfect no matter how much I try. I'm human. I'm imperfect. I'm learning. I'm growing. You know, being in the court system is not normal for the average person. And then I think about, and also opinion and fair comment. So defamation only applies to false statements of fact, not pure opinions. So for example, a pure opinion is like, well, I think he's a real jerk. You know, that's generally protected. It's clear that's your opinion. But the limit, I think, is, here's another thing people get confused. Remember, it's a gray area. When you say, in my opinion, allegedly, etc., there's a misconception that that automatically protects you, but it doesn't. Again, it's the generalized statement. What you're implying really matters. Just because you say, in my opinion, he stole that car. That's not really opinion if you're saying he did it. You know what I'm saying? You can say, in my opinion, I think he has the ability to steal that car, but you can't say, you can't really be accusatory unless like it's an absolute definitive fact, to be certain you have the evidence kind of thing. It's so complicated. I know. Absolute and qualified privilege is also a thing. The law, it seems from my understanding, protects speech in certain settings, even if it is false, to encourage open communications in vital areas. So from my experience in my case, I think it could apply, because we're talking about education, we're talking about student loans, we're talking about the nursing field, whether it's education, the healthcare system, the working environment. Healthcare is such a vital part of the world, and especially the student loan conversations nowadays. Like, this isn't something that's just about me. It's definitely bigger than that, and it's educational. I think it's something people should know, that things that I didn't know at the time. So I think absolute privilege could apply here, because that complete immunity is typically, from what I've seen and understood, to be reserved for participants in like judicial or legislative proceedings, like a witness testifying in court, for example. Or qualified privilege is like, it protects statements that are made in good faith or shared for interest or even public interest. So if like you're reporting a crime and in good faith you thought you saw something, you did see something, like nobody can come after you for that. Like if you're doing something in good faith to try and help, especially those around you, the public, to make things better, usually that can fall under a privilege of such, that fair reporting, if you will. And remember, public figures and actual malice are a thing. So like, if a person is suing you, hypothetically speaking, and they're like a public figure, they're well known, I think it's much harder, because again, you can't be a public figure and say, I don't want scrutiny. You can't have it both ways, especially like my case is centered in New Jersey. And I'm pretty sure, from my understanding, it's like they have to prove like you did it with actual malice, like your intention was to harm, like there was nothing beneficial about what you were doing, what you were saying, like there was no end goal of positivity, like it was just to actually hurt. And there was a reckless disregard for the truth, even though you had it. I think that also matters. And then also, I want you to know, a lot of people get scared about speaking up because although it's the truth, they just get scared of the process. But some things I learned there are procedural defenses. And unfortunately, I've had to learn this, There are things called anti-slap motions. A slap suit, more or less, from what I know, is when somebody just sues you to like run you dry, run you through the process, make you miserable, so you just stop doing it. As discussed, my case is in New Jersey. So, for example, from what I know, New Jersey's Uniform Public Expression Protection Act allows you to move for an expedited dismissal if the lawsuit targets such protected public speech. There's statute of limitations, there's retraction, like there's so many things the average person just doesn't know, which is why it's so helpful to have a lawyer to break all of this down. So even, I can't tell you what to do, but I do believe in standing up for what's right, especially when it affects other people and it can change the world for the better. So I don't want people to think, yes, it happens. You can be run around. You can be ran dry. It's not a perfect system by any means, but I don't want people to be scared, of doing the right thing, whatever that means to you. So I think a lot of people just don't speak up because they're scared, and it is scary. Like, the law is scary, the judicial system, the government, like how the world works, once you understand, like it is scary. But just like anything else in life is scary that you've never done before. So even if someone feels like they're 100% right and they'll probably have the law on their side at the end, I feel like people don't speak up because the punishment is the process, people often stay silent because, you know, the journey can just be a nightmare, and you just have to have that mental strength to get through it and prevail. Which is why you can probably see I've been busy, guys, working on present time, still trying to do this and post and all the things. It's a heavy burden to bear. I didn't expect it quite to evolve like this. I really didn't understand how many people this affected, what this looks like, how many moving parts there is, like how this isn't just about a school and a student, how many other, you know, like when we talk about, you know, financial aid and the public and education, the board of nursing and like so many things it affects. I didn't realize what can of worms there was being opened. But it's a lot. So I will be back on normal schedule in about a month. So yeah, I'm not going anywhere. I'm just focusing, and I want you to know I'm putting all my energy, time, and resources into doing the best I can for the greater good. And that is where my attention has been. So thank you for bearing with me. But let's get into some questions and comments from the week. Teresa Madison, 2928, says, my college transcripts from 1980 through 1983 have been used a multitude of times since Accured for Jobs, further education, meaning BSN, MSN, postmasters. Go you! Transcripts never expire. Keep up the fight. Exit exams. As standalone events are not courses. Predictor exams are just that. A predictor, it forecasts the score you may score on NCLEX and guides your study for NCLEX. It's just like the world doesn't revolve around me. Like, I hear of nurses every day, nursing students, other people's lives, like I've learned to live with it, but of course there's always a little piece in the back of my mind that I am reminded of this situation constantly, because the world doesn't revolve around me and I don't want it to. I want to be happy for other people. I want to see, you know, people succeed. I want to see the world change, and when students aren't affected by the things I am, that makes me really happy. But also, it's just like, it's also hard at the same time. So it's just hard when, you know, other nurses recognize my education, doctors have supported my education, the board of nursing recognizes it, and it all comes down to the judicial system or an attorney across the table or a judge. Like, it's just so weird. Like, it's such a weird concept, like, that there has to be an argument about this. Like, the people who matter that I'm dealing with every day, like, I don't know, it's just weird to think, like, the doctors that have supported my education, the nurses who recognize the education, the students who have the same academic history as me, my experience in the healthcare field for many years, all the different things I've done, hospital, gastro, endo, primary, kids, like, it's just like it all comes down to framing and an attorney who's being paid to more or less refute what I'm saying and present the school's side. Through my observation, that's what it looks like. So it's just like a weird concept. Natasha says, I failed the exit exam and passed the NCLEX on the first try at 85 questions. It's going to be okay. That makes me so happy, and I'm so glad that your school allowed you to take your NCLEX even though you failed the exit exam. And that's how it should be, and that's why, you know, it took a while, but I'm glad. We as a collective, this wasn't just me, it was a lot of us who spoke up and said something to change things, and I think they're still changing to this day, so I'm so glad that nobody else has to experience this. Amy says, you are allowed to retake the NCLEX. Why should this one test be the final say for your whole career? That is insane. That is exactly the heart of this case as well. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Lily says, passing every class, every exam, completing every clinical hours to then not get a diploma because of an exit exam is unethical. Let NCLEX be the determining factor as it should be. And I totally agree with you. That is what the NCLEX is there for. You do your academics, you get that foundation, and then it's up to the Board of Nursing what happens from there. Heather MG33 says, absolutely not. I failed my practice tests, like her predictor exams, and passed the NCLEX at 75 questions in under an hour. My friend who passed the practice tests failed the NCLEX. Some failed the NCLEX. I know that to be true too, because nobody can predict the future, just like nobody can totally predict the weather. They can tell us it's going to rain today, but it might not. Like, the fact anybody thinks they can predict the future and say nothing in what you did matters because they predicted your future to be XYZ, it just feels irrational. It feels illogical. In my observations, it just feels like something's missing. Like, I'm going to take a break because I have to stay mentally strong. I have to stay focused. I can't get into this too much. Again, that's why I've been a little absent and not talking so much about this, because I really have to stay focused. And when I talk about it like this, I get a little emotional. And I'm so happy for this process because I've learned how to, separate myself from taking things personally. Because, you kind of have to in life. Although it may be personal, you can't let it consume you. It's just how life works. Everything is very procedural sometimes. And I just have to separate the two. I have no time to break down right now. I have to keep going and keep my mind straight. No matter what's being said, I have to remember it. Don't take it personal. Can't be like this all day. I have to keep going. So, on that note, we will be back next week, and I'm going to try and post a couple more videos about it just to kind of keep things going, because I know what I'm going through helps other people, and that also matters. So, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next week.